If you're a painter, you probably have a couple of paintbrushes just like this. They're dingy, they're dirty, they're fraying, they're falling apart, and probably you forgot to clean them, which means you got caked on paint, hard spots all over the place, and you kind of want to throw that paintbrush away, but don't do that just yet. I'm going to show you a product that's going to clean and restore our old paintbrushes so we can still use them in our painting projects. Want to know what it is? Well, stick around because here we go. Hey, it's me, it's Wild, coming at you to help you with your creative adventures to make sure you become bigger and better with all the tips, tricks, tutorials, and confidence that I give you. If this is your first time here and need help with all that, do me a favor and hit that big red subscribe button down below and tick that bell so you know when my videos go live for you. So what is this miracle product that's going to not only clean our brushes, but restore our old ones that we can use? Well, it is Murphy's Oil Soap, and to be honest, I've used this product a couple of times, but it's already when my paintbrushes are wet and easy to clean up, and it worked fantastic. But I kind of want to put this product to the test. So what I did is I went out and bought some cheap paintbrushes. I bought 6 of them, 3 for oil and 3 for acrylic. For 2 of them, I painted with them and left them to dry for 1 week straight with paint still on the bristles. Did that again for a 1 day, and I did it again for a couple of hours. This way we kind of get a big gambit to test from. Just so we're all on the same page, the oil paint I'll be using for our test is a Winsor & Newton Prussian Blue oil paint. For the acrylic side, it's gonna be an Artist Loft Ivory Black acrylic paint. Now I'm gonna treat my brushes all the same as if I had just finished painting or discovered my brushes because they've had time to dry. So for my oil brushes, I'm gonna dip them in some paint thinner to loosen up all the pigment and binder. For my acrylic brushes, I'm gonna dip them in some slight warm water to do the same effect. Gonna take both brushes and put them against a beater rack or a screen to work off, again, the excess paint or binding material that's left on those bristles. If you want a cool little hack here and you want to restore your paintbrushes, I really recommend also cleaning your paintbrushes at this phase with a spare toothbrush, because that'll get inside the bristles and clean it without ruining your paintbrush. We can do this step again in a different spot, which I'll bring up. Now that we've worked off the big chunks of paint and binder on our bristles, we can move over to using our Murphy's soap oil. Now there's a trick to using Murphy's soap oil. You want to find yourself a spare jar. A baby food jar works excellent here, but if you're a single bachelor like me, you don't have any of those, and if you do, it's kind of creepy. So a good awesome substitute that I know everyone out there who's a creative person will have is a shot glass. Use a spare shot glass, and in here we can pour in our Murphy's oil soap. Now pour your Murphy's soap into your glass container. You only need enough to cover the bristles for the paintbrushes that you'll be cleaning or restoring. Now before you put your paintbrush in the glass container, you actually want to be very diligent about how you do this. Don't stick your paintbrushes all the way in and let them rest. And don't push your paintbrushes towards the bottom, because you run the risk of your paintbrushes resting on the bottom and pushing paint from the bottom of the bristles all the way up to the top of the bristles, where they can get into the ferrule, which means they can ruin your paintbrush even further. The correct way to do this is lightly put your paintbrushes in the glass container, and against the side of the glass container, just move it up and down and swirl it around gently, and this is going to get inside your bristles and break up all that extra pigment and binder to make it clean. Now if your paintbrushes look like this, they're really old, really dirty, really dingy, and they've been drying for a long time, you can do a cool little trick. You can do stages of Murphy's oil, because what happens is when you stick your paintbrush in there, it's gonna get a little sludgy or a little dirty. And what you can do is go from one stage to the next, and it'll keep working off that excess paint, which I really recommend doing if you have a brush that is really dirty. Now that your paintbrush is fully coated in the Murphy's oil soap, let it sit there for a little bit on an edge or someplace that you know it'll be safe, where it won't be putting soap on the ground, or at least put a paper towel beneath it so that way you don't slip and fall. We want the soap to sit on the bristles for a little bit to work itself into that binder and pigment to break it up for our next step. Now, depending on how long you leave it here, really depends on how dirty your brush is. So you may, again, have to do this in a couple of stages. Now we get to wash our paintbrushes. You want to use lukewarm water. Not too hot because we don't want to damage our brushes, and not too cold. You want to Goldilocks it here, okay? So just do like a nice little light finger touch. Take your paintbrush that's coated in Murphy's oil soap and pull out your palm and let the water dribble into it and work the paintbrush back and forth to work up a very good lather. And you should start to see some of the pigment and binder come off with the water and soap. Like we said, depending on how dirty your brush is, this may need a few times to get something really clean or restore it back to a usable state. All right, how did our Murphy's oil soap stack up in our test? Well, let's start with our acrylic paint brushes first. With our wet paintbrush, which is about 2 hours of paint that dried on the brush, it actually came off really easily with one run through of our system of cleaning here. The brush looks super clean, it bends, it just needs to be reshaped and everything will be fine with our paintbrush. On our 1 day, which is 24 hours of acrylic paint drying on there, it took 2 to 3 times to get it clean with the Murphy soap, but you know what? It actually came back to a usable state. It has some hard points in there, so I may only use it for certain things like highlights. For our 1 week, you know what? I actually got it back to almost new. There are some small chunks inside the paintbrush that go up and down some of the bristles, but I got a lot off of here. Now, to be fair, I had to do about 3 or 4 runs with the Murphy oil soap, but it still bends, it still has some bounce, and it looks clean and it is still usable. So this actually worked out really well, provided you do enough run-throughs with the Murphy oil soap. So what about our oil paint brushes? Well, with our wet paintbrush, which is 2 hours of oil paint on there, it worked fantastic. It ate through that oil paint really quickly to make it look perfect and brand new, and just how a paintbrush should be. For our 1 day, which is 24 hours of oil paint drying on there, it stained and left a lot of chunks. Now, it's not an unusable paintbrush. You could still use it for things that you have to tap on for highlights or perhaps even laying of grass, but I was still surprised at how many big chunks were left on the paintbrush. So I would say it's not bad, but not great. For our 1 week, which is a lot of time on our paintbrush here for oil paint to sit, it took off surprisingly a good chunk to where it wasn't hard, and I could use this paintbrush for maybe some things, but it's still got a lot of chunks in here. But believe it or not, it still actually has some bounce and some give, and I can shape the brush to make it usable. It's gonna have a lot of stain, a lot of binder, and a lot of pigment left on those bristles there. So all in all, it didn't do too bad, but not as good as I've always seen from YouTube reviews and also threads from art people. It's a great product, don't get me wrong, because it actually did restore a lot of these brushes, but I thought it would totally restore everything to brand new. Now, I've heard a lot of people say on different forums and threads that you kind of need to work off the Murphy's oil soap, which I agree with and don't agree with. I guess it depends on the type of painter you are. There's a few things you can do here. You can just work it within the water and get all that Murphy's oil soap off, or I see a lot of people take a few dabs of Dawn dish soap to kind of work out the remainder of the Murphy's oil soap. Or, you know what you can do is when you're going to start your next painting, if you're using oil paint, you can dip your paintbrush in thinner, which is gonna work off the rest of that Murphy's oil soap. But what I personally like to do, and I recommend for you, is after I've worked off my Murphy's oil soap and I've kind of blotted the paintbrush dry, I like to use my master paintbrush cleaner and conditioner. And that's really key, is the conditioner part, is because it's not only gonna get the remaining pigments out of there with the cleaning side, it's gonna condition the brush, which means it's gonna nourish the bristles, it's gonna make sure they last long, which is what I really want for your paintbrushes, and you probably should do to your older paintbrushes that you're rejuvenating and bringing back to life, because they probably haven't had any nourishment in those bristles in a long time. So make sure you do that, because it really works. Now, I know that's a lot of steps, but trust me, it's gonna be worth it for you. At the end here, just make sure you blot it dry, reshape your brush, and let it air dry off an edge, and your paintbrushes are gonna be so much better. You're gonna thank me a ton, because I just saved you a bunch of money. Now, if you like any of these products that we mentioned, the Murphy's oil soap and also the Master brush cleaner and conditioner, you can do me a huge favor and use the links down below. They're affiliation links, which means they help out my channel. They cost you nothing, and I got brand new ones down there, so they should be taking you to the right location in many countries and regions to help you out. So thank you for using those links down below. Now, if you need any more helpful tips and tricks with painting, I got so many of them for you. I'm gonna put a couple of videos over here to the right-hand side where you can become bigger and better with your creative adventures. Wild wishing you the best of luck. Keep those paintbrushes wet and clean, and I will see you all later. Take care, and of course, peace.